Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session, Exploring the Zoom Administrative Experience. We're going to be doing not quite a deep dive, but an overall view of the admin portal. I just ask for Q&A. If you hold your questions till the end, we have 2 microphones. You can come up and ask questions. My name is Mike Riggs. I'm a Customer Success Manager here with Zoom, and I'm joined by Chris with Raymond James. Chris, you want to do a...
So I'm Chris Fecky. I'm at Raymond James. We're in the middle of deploying Zoom to 14,000 associates globally. In my past role at the last company I was with, we rolled out Zoom to 7,000 associates globally in a time frame of, honestly, about 5 days.
Cool. All right, so we're going to start off with the basics, just 3 main things, kind of every administrator, whether you're the owner or just like a lower level admin that you should be aware of, not just aware of, but use, starting with the service status page. So here, the main takeaway is subscribe for updates. That way, if there are any status notifications, upcoming releases, maintenances are scheduled here. It's a really easy to remember URL, status.zoom.us. We also have our release notes. They are organized by product line. It's great so that you can go there, you can see all the features that are getting released, and we also have URLs to download the new updates directly from the release notes page. And then finally, the Help Center. This is really should be your first go-to if you have questions. We have a ton of support articles as well as some quick video introductions on everything you can do within Zoom. And then if you have additional questions, there's a submit a request button in the top right, and you can contact our support team and they can help you further. Another really easy to remember URL, it's just support.zoom.us. So hopefully, take away from those 3 slides, subscribe for updates on status.zoom.us, and if you have questions, the first line of defense is support.zoom.us. Jumping into the web portal, I think it's important to note that it is the same access point for end users as it is for admins. Admins will also have, you can see in the top left here, it's your personal section. So this is where end users as well as admins can set up their own personal settings for meetings. When you're setting up those settings, we categorize them into 3 different groups. We have meeting settings, recording settings, and telephone settings. And your end users will be able to customize these as much or as little as admins allow. We'll go over locking settings in a little bit here. Why is this not going next? Oh, there we go. So with this screenshot, you can see what it looks like as an admin. This is my admin profile. I have my top left personal section where I can make all of my settings, and then everything that I can do as an admin for dashboard, room management, if I'm a Zoom room admin, as well as account settings is in the bottom left. It looks the same for kind of the account settings as it does for the user settings. You'll see we have all the settings listed. There's a description under each. You have the toggle button, blue means it's on, gray means it's off. But when you're setting it up for the account, you also have a lock button. So a popular setting is join before host. If you wanted to turn that on and lock it on for all of your users, you would just click on that lock icon next to it, and then your end users would not be able to turn that off. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of settings. Depending on your environment, you may want to have a more restricted environment or a more open environment. I know, Chris, being a financial institution, you have quite a few settings locked, so do you want to talk about some of those?
Yeah, so being a financial institution, we have a lot of compliance concerns and legal concerns. There are a few things we had to turn off. When we first launched Zoom, we weren't ready to archive the chat. So the archiving tool that we use is not Zoom compatible at this point, and we haven't gotten around to getting a new archiving tool to be able to archive chat. So we actually have chat turned off at the global level, and then we have it locked. So even if someone wanted to turn on chat on their own account, they don't have the ability. We also have local recordings locked. We've disabled them. There's really no compliance once you store a file to your desktop. We have no way of knowing how long you retain that file. So we turned that off, we locked it. If someone wants to record, they record to the cloud.
Cool.
We'll do questions at the end.
Yeah. And when it comes to locking down those settings, I was talking about account level settings. You can segment your users within Zoom, so you may have some people that should have access to local recording or for premium audio. So it's really important to know how to segment your users within Zoom to get the most out of the product. I'm going to focus on 3 different ways that you can segment your users' roles. This is kind of like admins, role-based access control, who has permissions to do what within Zoom. Groups, this is like what we were saying, it's really about settings, who should be able to have different settings within Zoom. And then we also have sub-accounts, so if you want a group that should be almost entirely separate from the rest of your users, you can create a sub-account, and they kind of exist under the umbrella of your master account. Cool. So with roles here, we have a screenshot of the roles at Zoom. And we have quite a bit of roles. So we have the 3 default: owner, admin, and member. But we've created, looks like, 5 additional admin roles. So we have Zoom Room admins. Some people have super admins where they can do everything within the portal, and some people segment it kind of granularly. So in this case, we have Zoom Room admins, we have support admins. I'm under the view only admin group, so I can view all of the admin settings, but I can't change any of them. And then we also have digital signage admins, which we'll touch on a little bit later. As far as role management goes, I don't think you're quite this granular in your use
No,
case.
we don't have this many different roles. We have a few that are similar to what you've described. So we have a view-only admin. Everyone in our help desk is assigned a view-only admin role. They're able to look at everyone's settings. So if someone calls into the help desk, hey, I can't do this, I can't do that, they're able to pull up their account, look at their settings. They can't make any changes, but if they see that a setting has been changed, they can either direct the user to change the setting or open a ticket and direct it towards us. We also have a team that sort of manages meetings like this. So they would sit in the back of the room and manage this meeting. We gave them view-only admin privileges to the dashboard. They don't need to see settings on individuals' accounts, but we gave them access to the dashboard so that they can log in and view the stats of all their meetings that they manage and see if there's any issues there in the meetings.
So when it comes to groups, like we were saying, a lot of this comes down to settings. This is a screenshot of, I think it's changed a little bit since I took this screenshot, but
Yeah.
of your setup. So we have 3 different groups here, all users. We have your team, the conference services, and then we have contractors. You want to talk a little bit about how you went this route?
Yep. So my team is a conference services team. We knew we needed a little more privileges as far as the settings go, so my team can actually download recordings. No one else can, but if someone has a meeting like this and they wanted to download the recording afterwards, we're able to pull it down from their account. Contractors also have different settings on their account. We also don't let them use SSO. It makes it a little bit easier for us to manage the contractors and kind of remove the accounts as they're terminated. And then we also have a few other groups that have been added since this. We have Canadian groups and groups for our UK business partners. That way we have local admins that can manage those groups and those groups only. And then we have one other group, so each department manages their own budget. We got a lot of requests. I don't want to have any additional charges, so we set up another group. We called it No Premium Audio, and that group, we actually took away all the premium audio features, so they'll never have any additional charges other than the cost of the Zoom license.
Right. I think the group admin piece is important to note. So depending on how decentralized your organization is, if you don't want to have one team that manages all of the groups, like you said, UK, Canada, you can set up those as separate groups and have individual group admins. So then they can administer their own group versus going to the main administration group. And then finally, sub-accounts, like I was saying, this is almost just like a separate account under the master umbrella. hate reading slides, but it's pretty comprehensive here. So you can easily manage subsidiaries such as maybe other companies you've acquired. And they're really separate in terms of ownership. You can even bill separately to sub-accounts. They have their own separate branding from the main account. And then when it comes to integrations as well as other security features such as HIPAA, they're separate. So if you were a healthcare organization, maybe you had some users in the field that are actual healthcare providers, they need to be HIPAA compliant. You could put them in a sub-account, turn on HIPAA for them, but then your corporate users that don't need to be HIPAA compliant wouldn't have to have that security feature turned on. And this came up recently with you as well, right?
Yeah. So we have one business group that does business with our major competitors. They have their own business entity. They're not branded as Raymond James. If you look at their website, you can't even tell that we own them. When we launched Zoom, we didn't think about anyone needing to not have our branding on meeting invites, the URL, all of that kind of stuff. Well, they had issue with it in the first day. So what we did was we set up a sub-account. And so they have a completely generic Zoom site, just like if you were to go sign up with a basic account almost. There's no branding at all related to Raymond James. And they also don't use our vanity URL anymore. They log in at zoom.us. So when you join one of their meetings or even get a meeting invite, you wouldn't know that they're related to Raymond James at all.
Cool. Moving on to Zoom rooms. Hopefully everyone here knows what a Zoom room is. If you don't, you have not been paying attention over the past 2 days. Not going to talk about what it is, just again, kind of the different administration capabilities of Zoom rooms from a high level. And again, focusing on 3 different areas. First one being the location hierarchy. Exactly what it sounds like. It's a hierarchy based on location. This is important because you can assign different permissions, settings, and admins based on those different hierarchy levels. Admins, again, pretty self-explanatory. And then digital signage, which I think is a cool feature. You can have digital signage only admins, so they can manage the art on those digital signages or on the Zoom room displays when they're not in use, but they can't mess with the setup of the Zoom room itself. Jumping into the location hierarchy, these are all the different options you have from country down to room. You don't have to use all of these. It really just depends on how your organization is structured. Chris, I think you use 4 of these, 5 maybe?
Yeah, we use the majority of these.
You do?
And this hierarchy is really the first time we've been able to manage our video endpoints as far as where they're located. So we have 600 plus branches throughout the US alone. They've always had unique names. We'll name them after whatever conference room you're putting the endpoint in. We used to use Polycom, and now that we have Zoom, we're actually able to track the name of the room and the building that it's located in.
Again, we touched on Zoom room admins. I mean, pretty self-explanatory. With those roles we described earlier, you could have a Zoom room admin for one particular room, for a whole floor, for a whole building, a whole country, or all of your Zoom rooms. And then digital signage, like I said, I think this is a pretty cool feature. If you have one Zoom room, you can have as many digital signage displays as you want. So you can have digital signage only displays, or you can use your Zoom rooms when they're not in use to display art. You can do images, videos, URLs. Again, it ties back to that hierarchy. You can upload different art to that hierarchy level. And then my personal favorite use of digital signage is to display all hands meetings. So with that streaming URL, you can put it in there at the hierarchy and push out your all hands to all of your digital signages in that level. You use it for something a little different, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's essentially content, but seeing as we have so many branches with clients coming in and discussing their financial plans, the financial advisors wanted something a little more unique, sort of the ability to put up a welcome message, welcome Chris, when I'm walking in the meeting. So what we've done is with Zoom digital signage, it's easy enough we can assign a local admin at each branch, and they can go through and upload welcome messages for their clients that are visiting that day. so that as a client walks in, they have a nice, welcoming, friendly message.
And hopefully invest. All right, Zoom Phone. So there was a wonderful Zoom Phone admin deep dive done yesterday by my colleague Tina back there. So I'm not going to go in depth into Zoom Phone administration, but it's kind of similar to Zoom Room in the sense that you can set up different sites, you can manage your users, you can manage the auto receptionist or call queues, and yeah, pretty similar to Zoom Room in that respect. And the session yesterday was recorded, so it should be available within the week. So if you want to do a deep dive in Zoom Phone administration, I'd love to do a deep dive into all of them, but we'd be here for probably 2.5, 3 hours. So just kind of touching on this one real quick. And now to my favorite part, the dashboard. I'm kind of a data nerd. I like data. I like finding out as much as I can about how things are being used. So there's really 2 different types of information you can get from the dashboard. First one being usage data, and then the other one would be kind of managing your meetings. So you can actually look at live meetings in real time, as well as troubleshooting based on past meetings. There we go. So this is what the main dashboard page looks like. We have a date filter in the top left, so you can filter by date and get visualization for all of your different metrics. At the top of these graphs, you'll see some text in blue. Those are the variables that you can actually change these graphs by. So if you wanted to look at usage by meetings, if you click on that drop down, you'll get multiple other options as to how you want to view the breakdown of that data. And then you can also export any of these to CSV file. And you can actually get some surprising insights from this, right? There were quite a few, I think, you didn't see before.
One thing that's really cool, so when you look at the title of each of these charts, whatever's in blue, there's a drop down there, and you can change what you're looking at. So to me, the most interesting thing that we learned is in the right-hand side here where it says usage by meetings, you can drop down, and we do a lot of looking at usage by audio type. We are a very audio conferencing heavy firm, always have been, probably always will be. What we've seen is we used to be about 80% PSTN audio conferencing. We're seeing that 67% of our Zoom meetings are now using VoIP audio, which is a drastic change in behavior. But these charts make it so much easier to look at rather than having to pull the meeting stats and generate graphs and charts out of them.
And now one of my favorite meeting tabs. So this is what the live meetings look like. You can actually see all of the meetings going on in real time. You can see high-level statistics here. There's a customize button in the top right, so we have additional columns you can turn on depending on your preference and what information you want to see. And then you can start to drill down from the meeting level down all the way to the participant level. So looking at what the meeting level looks like, if I click into one of those meeting IDs, I can see a list of participants. I can see if they were on Wi-Fi or wired, what their devices were, their connection type, and really kind of start to troubleshoot. There's also this little join as assistant button over there in the top right, and it's been really useful for your use case, right?
Yeah, we had an IT hands-all meeting probably before we were ready to on Zoom. So we set it up, it was set up as a meeting instead of a webinar. People were joining in and not muting themselves and speaking over everyone. There were 700 people on the meeting. So what I was actually able to do was go to the dashboard, join as an assistant, and we were able to manage the meeting while it was happening rather than having to ask the CIO to continuously announce, please mute yourself. We were able to sort of remediate the issue before it became a big deal.
And then we have a very similar layout for past meetings. You can get some additional information such as end time, duration, but ultimately it's a very similar layout. You can click on that customize button to customize the columns you see, and you can start drilling down from all the meeting lists to the meeting specific details and then participant details. So you'll see in this next slide, this is what it looks like looking at a past meeting. Again, very similar information. The main difference that I like to point out, on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a little exclamation point. That will tell you the leave reason. So if anyone was disconnected due to a network connection error, it'll be highlighted in red. So this is really useful when you start to troubleshoot based on feedback of like poor quality meetings. And you can, if it will turn, there we go, see the actual statistics for a user. This was me in one of the meetings, so you can see my bitrate, latency, jitter, and this has been useful as well, right, for some of your meetings where people have reported some issues.
Yeah, we get a lot of complaints after the meeting. No one ever wants to take a break from their meeting and let us know that they're having an issue. So we get a lot of complaints after the meeting, and these stats make it really easy. Our biggest complaint is always audio echo. So we can go into these stats, and even if they tell us, well, I wasn't joined computer audio, we're able to verify, well, you don't think you were, but your computer, the mic and speakers were on, and then you dialed in at your desk phone right next to it. So the echo was on your end, and we're able to identify that and walk those users through the proper way to join audio so that they're not having the issue every meeting that they join.
And then we have a Zoom phone dashboard. Very similar to what you've seen. The main difference is we have a mean opinion or a MOS score. So it actually gives you like a quality of the call. So you could see if it was a good call or a bad call to help identify and isolate potential network issues. So now I'm going to kind of hand it over to Chris, even though you've been helping me out, speaking about 50% of the time, to talk about why Raymond James decided to go with Zoom and some of the results we've seen so far.
Yeah, so I've been at Raymond James for almost a year now. And when I first started, my role was to form a new team to manage all of the different conferencing services. At one point, we had almost a dozen different conferencing services. We had 4 or 5 different audio conferencing providers. All of Zoom's major competitors had an instance at Raymond James. We were at a point where each department could go out and buy whatever software they wanted to. And when they initially bought it, saying, oh yeah, we'll manage it, we'll own it, we'll support it. And I think we all know how that goes. After a couple weeks, it's too much for them to manage, so it gets turned over to IT. So when I started, we had 11 different platforms that essentially all did the same thing. We were looking for one solution that could replace all of them and have the same functionality, if not more, than our users had today. And we knew that our culture was very resistant to change. I mean, I think that's every culture, but also we weren't technical. Our typical user does not log into a computer after hours. They're at work. Most of them don't take their laptops home. I mean, it's the only time they're on a computer is at work. Some of them don't even have smartphones. I know it's hard to believe, but a lot of our users are still using flip phones and stuff like that. So we thought we had good usage with GoToMeeting, which was our existing platform. What we've seen, and this chart's a little interesting, we started with a pilot of Zoom in December. When I started, we had 20 demo licenses in use. We didn't actually announce Zoom to anyone at the firm until June 9th, which is the dotted line that you see on the chart. From December to June, our pilot grew from 20 users to, I think we ended with about 650 demo users, right, as part of our pilot. So that's why you see the really drastic increase starting in June. But we're seeing almost double the meetings that we ever had with GoToMeeting. The usage has grown really quickly.
Yeah, in just 4 months too. Right?
Yeah. And then here's sort of another chart. This one shows the active users. So again, we grew by word of mouth until June, where the dotted line is. We only had 1,500 active host accounts with GoToMeeting, so we never went over that. As of September, we had 2,900 active hosts in Zoom. Now that we're in October, we're actually well over 3,000, so we've more than doubled our active host count in just 4 months. And then here's what I was talking about earlier, where I was quite surprised. So we've always used PSTN audio conferencing. That's what our culture is based around. Through the dashboard and the reporting, we're seeing that 67% of our meeting audio is now VoIP. We're getting people away from dialing in on the phone or even using the call me feature. We've really been heavily communicating this. So with GoToMeeting, they never really had a VoIP platform that worked. When we first started talking to people about Zoom, we were pitching them the idea of VoIP, and everyone's first concern was, no, I've tried it before, it doesn't work for me. Once we kind of talked to them a little bit more and got them to join a demo, we put on demos. We even asked them to join our Zoom training sessions by VoIP. And our big thing was give it a couple minutes. If you can't hear well or they can't hear you, fine, disconnect and dial in by phone. But now we're seeing over 67% of our meeting attendees are joining VoIP, and it's really a big cost savings for the firm.
And I feel like a big part of that too was having a plan for how to provide them with USB headsets, right?
Yeah, so we use ServiceNow. So if you need a new laptop or new mouse or keyboard, you can go in and order it. Procurement places you order, it gets shipped to you. We added a few USB headsets and even the little Logitech webcams that sit on top of your laptop because a lot of people use docking stations, so we were seeing that people weren't joining video. We gave them the ability to order their own headsets and their own webcams, and that's what we're attributing to some of this increase in VoIP audio.
Great. All right, so wanted to leave plenty of time for questions, so hopefully some of you have some questions. If so, feel free to come up and ask.
So my first question is, I have two questions.
Okay.
First question is, what were the struggles that you faced trying to move people away from traditional dial-in over to computer? Like, what were the struggles and what did you do to convince them? Because that's the same problem that we're having right now at my company, where everybody wants to dial in. That is the thing to do. And even in board meetings, right? It's something that I've been trying to kind of preach and tell them this is so much better, using your computer audio with the headset, and it's just a much better experience and more integrated rather than just dialing it in.
Well, so the big struggle is, fear, right? Everyone's used to computer audio not working. Historically, VoIP does not work well. What we do a lot is we'll join a Zoom meeting and we'll talk about their concerns, because they never have just that one concern. They're always terrified of everything Zoom has to offer, right? So we'll talk to them for a good 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll say, well, you were concerned about VoIP, but I'm using my computer and I'm having no issues hearing you. How do I sound, right? A lot of times what people need is to see something work before they're willing to take your word for it.
I see. And the second question is, since you had multiple platforms of conferencing, the constant struggle that I have right now is the fear of not giving options, right? That is a struggle that I have with my organization. And the one thing that I keep telling them is, the more options we give a user that doesn't know any better, the more confusing it's going to be. That's always been my thought process, in terms of, giving too many options and having too many avenues of achieving the same goal, right? So how did you go about convincing people that all you need is Zoom and not, 2 or 3 other options just in case?
So what we did is we created a chart, and it had all of the basic functions that you would expect in a conferencing platform, right? So we had all of the features that you would want in an audio conferencing, and all of the features in a web meeting, joining from a room system, all of that different stuff. And we had different columns for each of the providers, and we sort of put a check mark in which one offers what. And when it really came down to it, we had so many users before that wanted choices, right? We had users that had 4 and 5 different accounts with multiple different audio conferencing vendors. They had a WebEx account, a BlueJeans account. What we did was we put together this chart and showed them, all right, what features are you using? Because Zoom's going to give you everything that you're using today. And you don't need to worry about what service do I use anymore. When I first started, the big thing was meetings were just scheduled in conference rooms. There was no one joining remote, and then if someone was working remote, it was a huge hassle 5 minutes before the meetings. The admins were freaking out, sending meeting updates with audio dial-in, and then they would send the audio dial-in and then realize that someone wanted to share their screen, and they'd be sending another update. With Zoom, we don't do that. We're getting in the habit of adding Zoom to every meeting. If you're on campus, great, join the meeting room. If not, don't. But we're seeing that a lot of people are just now getting in the habit of, you know what, if you don't need it, great. If so, it's in the meeting invite anyways.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the session, by the way. And I had a lot of questions, but if there's time, I'll come back. But I have 2 main questions. I thought I heard you say you implemented Zoom in 5 days
Yes.
at the previous company. Can you share a little bit more about that and what kind of, from a roles perspective of having it deployed, who were involved and what did it take? And then in terms of supporting the platform after deployment, who's actually involved and what kind of key roles that are needed to kind of maintain and support? And then I have another question after that.
Yeah, so at my last company, we were an IT distributor. Cisco was our largest customer. We were their largest distributor globally. We had a lot of executive pushback. C-level executives were afraid to go against Cisco being their largest distributor. We got the Zoom contract signed at 6 p.m. on a Friday, and our WebEx contract expired the following Wednesday. We were also in the process of integrating a company we had acquired, and so we doubled in size overnight from a 7,000 employee company to a 14,000 employee company globally. And so we had our own WebEx instance, they had their own WebEx instance. We had from Friday to Wednesday to migrate 2 different WebEx instances and 7,000 users. It was a struggle. The biggest struggle for us was training, right? We couldn't communicate anything about Zoom. We couldn't even announce training until we had the contract signed at Friday. What we did was we worked with corporate communications, and we had every communication drafted and ready to go. We worked with Zoom, and we had our training all scheduled and set up on the calendar, ready to go. So when that contract got signed Friday at 6, our first communication went out at 6:15. It was a struggle, but to be honest, being under that tight of a timeline sort of made it easier. We knew very clearly what the end goal was, and we were able to work towards it. We also didn't have a lot of the restrictions that I have now at a financial services industry. Most of the settings we left as is, and we did a lot of enhancements later on down the road where we would change some of the settings to make them easier for people to use. But we essentially rolled Zoom right out of the box to 7,000 people. And then the second question was about supporting it, right?
Yeah, just key roles that are required to get it running and support.
Yep, so we had a 2-man team other than myself. The biggest part after the first couple weeks of training was sort of publishing user guides. And that's something I learned after the first implementation, and we've done a really good job of it here at Raymond James. To be honest, what we've done is we've taken most of the user guides off the Zoom support site, and we've tailored them to our Zoom instance, right? So I can't send people to support.zoom.us because they're going to see features that we have locked. They're going to see that Zoom offers chat, and my team's going to get a million questions about it. So we created our own user guides, and we took out all the features that we have turned off, And it's really helped us with a lot of our support issues.
Thanks.
Mike, I currently have a group that's on another campus, and I have them in a group, and I want to assign them a certain number of pro accounts, and I would like to assign somebody as an admin of that group. Should I leave them as a group, or should I make a sub-account?
As long as they don't need separate branding or separate integrations,
No.
just keep them as a group and set a group admin.
And then can I assign them only so many pro accounts out of our whole group of pro accounts?
I don't think you can limit the number of
Okay.
accounts within that group.
They're just part of our, yeah, I just have to monitor it. Thank you.
Hey, it's Andy Yates at ThoughtWorks. I was really interested in the hierarchy for rooms and digital signage, and actually your use case of like I want to be able to show a message for each client. And I was wondering if there's anything in the roadmap that helps us do that in a more flexible way. So for example, we have a whole bunch of small rooms for huddle spaces, and then we've got boardrooms, and we'd want to have different content in those across regions without having to manage in each and every single different region as we do that. And so is there some way, or I guess on the roadmap, for tagging or marking these rooms in a different way so I can manage not just in a single hierarchy?
I would have to connect with me after this.
Okay,
A
I could do
second.
that.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I had a specific question on deployment and adoption specific to executive admins and executives. Can you share a little bit about that experience? How did you approach that, and what was that process?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, it's white glove service. It's touching each and every one of the executive admins, executives if they want to learn. What we see now is that the admins, I mean, we know they schedule the meetings, but a lot of times they're in the room starting the meeting too. So what we did was we worked with all of the executive admins. Zoom gave us a bunch of swag. We sort of made some goodie bags for C-level executive admins and passed them out. And with that was some of our key user guides printed out, essentially how to schedule on behalf of someone else. All of the basics, because we scheduled a few trainings, no one attended. We have 14,000 associates. 1,000 attended the trainings? I mean, max 1,000, less than 10%. So we knew that we were going to get a lot of negative feedback if we weren't training people. The easiest thing to do was stop by and let them know that we're here. We created a group email box that everyone can send to. We were even looking at creating little business cards with our team information on it so that people could reach out to us if we need to.
Did you have any specific IT personnel that was assigned to support in the initial rollout? Or? Okay.
No, so at Tech Data we did. We had sort of an executive concierge position. And they had that relationship with C-level executives where they could go into their offices and spend the time teaching them Zoom. We also found at Tech Data that we didn't really need to. One of our key selling points was how easy it is to use, how I can place a laptop with a Zoom invite in front of an executive and ask them to start the meeting, and they're able to see which link to click, and they're able to turn on their camera and figure out the audio settings. At Raymond James, it's been a little bit more hands-on. And even then, the executives don't want one-on-one, they just want step-by-step instructions, and that's where our user guides have come in handy. We're sending out a lot of user guides.
Thank you.
Hopefully, last question. Any ties back to Active Directory or LDAP for group assignment and or role responsibility? Because it seems kind of redundant having to manage things in a second place if you can do it in one place. You know what I mean?
So what are you talking about, like with SAML?
Something to that effect, yeah, where rather than as a user having to reassign a person as an admin in Zoom, if they're in a particular group within SAML or Active Directory.
Yep. So you can assign them to a group or a role, and then you can also do group admins via SAML as well. It's a recent release.
So I actually have a question related to that, because we have one account for 40,000. So it's a huge institution, Western University. And what we did login through SSO, and then we have advanced attributes. And then I created groups for faculty and staff for audio only. And every time someone logs in, the SSO overrides what I created. So,
Connect with me after that too, so we can troubleshoot that.
yeah.
We had the same
Yeah,
issue at
so-
first, but
So
we
am I missing
found out-
something, or?
I don't remember exactly what the fix was, but we had the same issue where we had certain people SAML mapped to different groups. And it wasn't working at first, but we did get it working.
Yeah.
Without creating extra attribute in LDAP, like, is there a way to fix that? Or?
Yeah, and I do know the way that the attributes are laid out in our SAML mapping, it's priority top-down. So it would just be a matter of working with either your CSM or support to make sure that all the rules are set up correctly. Looks like we're at time. But I will be out front if anyone else has additional questions, and for those of you